Hello, you're about to watch or listen to a podcast episode I had with a guy named Bryce Eddy. Now, the full podcast episode will be on all podcast directories. There will be a cut up version for the YouTube channel. I knew this conversation was going to be interesting because I knew that he was MAGA, or at the very least, he seems to be a Trump supporter based off the information he sent me. And my podcast is all about talking with guests, going through different perspectives, finding solutions. And I was going to attempt to do this with someone I know for a fact I ideologically completely disagree with. So I'm going to have this conversation. It was respectful. I was professional. And I do think it was potentially productive. I do hope you guys enjoy. There is a lot of very interesting opinions made in this podcast episode. So let me know what you guys think. And if you want more of this conversation with people that I vehemently disagree with, that are completely on the different side of the aisle, let me know that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this conversation. If you're saying that the nuclear family, which is like mother and father and kids, is kind of the strongest principle, I think that generally is agreed upon throughout entirety of society. Does it go beyond that? Do you think they have to implement a very strict Christian sect of values, or is it more so just the idea that a family is necessary, just being like a nuclear family? Because I do think that's important to parse out.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a family is important. I mean, again, that's God's design for the family was pretty dang clear, and when you abandon that, you have chaos. I mean, look within what the Democrats did to the black families. I mean, in the prior to 1960, the married rate and togetherness within the black families was incredibly high, and it was a very, very strong culture at the time. And then they came in with the welfare state and encouraged otherwise. And you saw fatherlessness in the homes and things like that skyrocket. I mean, man, Malcolm X was right. Malcolm X, preached beware of the white liberal. And they worked very hard to get the black families and black culture to trade one form of slavery for another. I mean, that's why LBJ was okay with the civil rights movement, is because he even came out, and he was one of the biggest racists on the planet. And he came out and said, I'll get them voting for us for the next 200 years. And all he did was create destruction. So that family unit is incredibly important. And we've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with your characterization. I do think there are some issues with welfare, but I also think that commonly gets mischaracterized in terms of implementation. Most people who's on welfare. Well, welfare is, and its implementation is the general idea that people want to be on welfare to get that government money. The issue is that most people don't, and this is a barely livable way to kind of live in general. There's a huge issue, especially in a lot of these communities, as American history has shown, of the ability to kind of move up in the structure of economic status because of certain systematic limitations or racist, individualistic limitations that were preventing Black people from kind of going up. And in this sense, when it comes down to it, welfare, there's no real good way to say that such a limiting, barely livable way of life that most people generally hate doing is a means to kind of get past it. I spoke with someone recently. He has issues with the welfare system, and it's not because it's welfare, but it's because its implementation is extremely inefficient. And it should be a system that is focused on getting people out of their situation, not keeping them in.
Oh, I could not agree more. But then we're agreeing, because it's getting them. It's
we're not agreeing, because when it comes down to the system itself, there are certain kind of thresholds that need to be met for you to kind of stay in the system. And they don't kind of work well together. And if you hit one, you don't really have the protections as an individual to kind of keep on going.
You understand? That's by design. That's to keep people down and handicapped. Okay, but so let's let's explore this for a minute, because what's happened is, so look, I'm sure you're aware of this, but I mean, Black culture, okay, and I'm specifically pointing this out because it was systematically and intentionally destroyed by bad racist jackasses. Okay, um, Black culture, and you guys had back in the day in history banks, um, Black Wall Street, very, very strong structures prior to the civil rights movement that were gaining and accumulating economic might and power. And then it was wiped out because of agreements that were made by racist leaders at the time during the civil rights movement that ended up wiping out a lot of that negotiating power that existed within Black culture at the time. And it was intentional to keep Black culture down. So you're saying some of the things that I completely agree with, but it was systematic in only that they wanted to see the emerging strength within Black culture destroyed.
Yeah, the racist individuals for sure.
Yeah,
I
and
I
that
wouldn't.
included one of our presidents.
All right. And when it comes down to it, I will say that yet we all know that these kind of racist individuals want to keep black people down. They and very much disrupting certain things, and they were segregating black people, and they were denying them rights and denying them certain abilities to rise in power and rise in influence. And there were programs out there because of how badly black people were treated to try to, okay, let's try to get them out of their situation based off kind of the systematic oppression throughout American history. Now, there are certain systems that worked for people that were able to kind of grow in certain black programs and become successful, become leaders and grow. And then there are other ways that the programs were just not used properly. And that's just a situation where a system that was here to meant to help black people is not constantly being looked at and developed and being constantly updated to ensure that it's meeting the needs based off current standards. And that's just a problem where black people were not being seen as like the focus of American change. There there were people on the left included that were going like, oh, we did enough, now let's move on. They weren't constantly updating it. So
Yeah,
the system that I was speaking with my guest about was not about this system should have never existed. It needs to be updated. It needs to be more efficient, and it needs to meet the people's needs today. And it's not just black people; it's all people that
no,
is on welfare.
no, I'm pointing out what is a broken system. I'm pointing out that it doesn't work, and it doesn't work for anybody. And I would agree with that. But I mean, I'm gonna, at the risk of pissing you off, I'm gonna say something that might bother you. But I think that's how we have real conversations. But you're talking about the programs and the things that were meant to, give black people a leg up. None of that should have existed. That handicaps people in general. That prevents people from pushing through and gaining strength. That's like giving you assisted physical. Let's say you're a weightlifter, and that's like, hey, I'm gonna help you up, and I'm gonna extra help you up with pushing this weight, and then I'm gonna put you on that bar with 315 pounds, and it's gonna crush you because all I did was help you, and you never grew strength. Hormesis is positive stress that helps us to grow strong. When I was talking about Black Wall Street and black banks, and if you look at the history of this, there was real strength being developed. And then there was an argument made that, oh, we need specialized programs and things like that. And they did that to screw over black families and black culture.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't agree to that. And when it comes down to a situation for of people, I do think there's validity in allowing you to struggle to gain success 100%. But there also needs to be a realization that there are certain types of limiters that's preventing said success. And there are
Like
certain
what?
conditional factors that are preventing certain success. I mean, racism. Simple as that. If someone sees you as less than or not capable, as not smart, and you won't be able to be beneficial to my business or to my society, then they're going to keep you out and
Well,
ensure
where's
that you
that?
do not
Well,
rise.
where's that happening? And I mean this sincerely. Like, where are you experiencing that?
I'm not saying now, I'm saying in American history,
Well,
as we
okay,
already
but
articulated.
yeah, but we got to be talking about now, right? We got to be talking
But
about,
that wasn't the conversation because you're referring to the existence and the implementation of welfare and then how it started back in the day in history regarding like all the banks and stuff. And then we moved back in the current time, and I told you how the current system is inefficient and it should be updated
okay,
into a more efficient system that meets
then
people's
how?
needs so they can struggle. Well, in the conversation for that I had with my guest, his idea is that these people that are struggling in this situation, they need to be more limited. So it's not, you can't be on it forever. We give you a document to ensure that, okay, you need these benefits, but you fill out exactly what you need to ensure that the programs that they're implementing it is ensuring that you get the proper resources to help with transportation if that's a struggle, or if your family needs some food, that's a struggle. But this is a conditional limitation to ensure that you move away and move up in the system so you can and get implemented into society. He talked about how he implemented a program that was limiting but more direct in terms of how it helped the person. And she got out of welfare and she was able to feed her kids pizza for the very first time. So this is our system needs to meet people what they at where they're at in terms of the needs that they individually need, and but do not ensure that they're growing, not just being like fed like a fat cow to ensure that they're
Yeah, I mean,
surviving.
look, what you're talking about, by the way, is, I mean, a very important principle. And by the way, it is a Christian principle. It's why we are to have local charity. Okay, and what I mean by that was, the reason Christians are supposed to give money to the churches, right, and arm the churches, is so that they can act as charities and go to those people and see what those people need. If you're just a piece of paper in a filing cabinet in Washington, that person, in Washington, that's just approving your benefits, doesn't know if you're actively going to work, if you're capable, if you're physically able. They don't know that, but somebody down at the local community center or the church does. And then they can figure out what you need. They can figure out, okay, this person needs milk for their baby. This person needs to, we need to find a job for this person. We need to give them something to get them off of, out through this hard time. I mean, I agree with that all day long.
Yeah, and I do think there are churches that do that. As I referred to earlier, my uncle and aunt, their
Yeah,
church, they do that for sure. And more churches to ensure definitely need to ensure that they are abiding by those values. And
sure.
of course, the ones that are not, we got to call it out, that are corrupting the system.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
and that goes for humanitarian that are not Christian as well, that are just humanitarian groups that potentially will bastardize it. I criticize them all the time. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong. Like I criticize the individual who was utilizing BLM improperly. The individual was like paying for their
Yeah, they're
stupid
buying a
houses.
bunch of houses in California.
Yeah, so like that's just an example of a leader that was not following the idea of raising black rights and just using it to benefit herself. We got to call that out
Agreed.
consistently all across the board when it comes down to these circumstances, regardless of who they are and what they say that they advocate for. I mean, I think when it comes down to this conversation, we both want growth for like America, and we both believe that there are certain values, regardless if they're Christian or not, that people need to abide by and utilize to ensure that they are creating the best society possible. Now, there's probably some disagreements in how we kind of go about that, especially you seem like you come from a very, very strict, more individualistic sense to kind of grow society. Do you believe that people really have that capability that if they're not kind of directed in the right direction to run society in a powerful and meaningful way?
Well, yes, I do believe in individual responsibility, if that's what you're talking about, for sure. And I believe in individual responsibility, largely first, community responsibility kind of second. Um, when you talk about directing people, I mean, I would need to hone in more on that, because I think that people do need to look. There's people who cannot help themselves, and they need us to help them. There are people who, you know, lack all kinds of things, and that's where maybe finding mentors. That's where you know trade schools, and there's all kinds of things that we can do as a country to improve the lives of people, train people, all that stuff. I'm not against that, but I believe that should be, like you said earlier, as local as possible. I think that should be as close to home as possible. I think that should be within, community and family structures as much as possible. Where that's lacking, then that's where I think you have um, organizations and others that are larger to come in and help people, and give people a boost, and all of that I'm not opposed to.
Okay, so to kind of be a little bit more clear, then, so from my understanding, because you spoke about the decentralization, then you spoke about how if there was like less programs to just allow like Black people to really kind of make something for yourself, and it seems to me that you really have a lot of faith in the idea of people being not necessarily running themselves, but communities kind of running themselves, so to speak. So it's not even individualistic, but it's definitely much more community based and much more focusing on the bottom versus the top. So that's what I was kind of honing in on, because if you were to believe in that principle, I guess I'll be curious on your idea on dealing with the billionaire class, the 1%, the rich of the rich. If people had a very specific person to look at that are uh, controlling society, or at the very least keeping it down. I mean, you mentioned Bill Gates as a name, for example. How would you approach dealing with this class of individuals that have so much influence to ensure that the people have more power again?
Well, I mean, I think you create opportunity for everyone, and all boats rise, and you're going to have billionaires. You're going to have people that have an ungodly amount of resources. Okay. There are good billionaires and there are bad billionaires. There are people that are doing great good for society and solving problems. Most all of the billionaires that we can think about throughout history have solved some major problem that has made all of our lives easier. Um, they are plenty of them that are oligarchs and have accumulated power and control unto themselves. The way that you combat that is by creating vibrant and robust economies that include strong middle class and include a lot of opportunity for everyone. But you're never going to get away from people who have unlimited or virtually unlimited resources. It doesn't matter what kind of society we are in. If you go and look at a communist society, you are going to have um, bureaucrats that have amassed amounts of resources that is mind numbingly boggling. It doesn't matter what um, kind of place we live in, someone is going to work harder or be in the right circumstances plus hard work, and they are going to accumulate more power. I mean, it's just, you can't escape that.
But that doesn't, at that point, that doesn't really make sense to me from your point of view, because you are preaching these ideas for like all these levels of trying to establish a level. You said you weren't believe in fairness, but at the very least a certain level of equality to ensure that people have the ability to make their lives as robust and as strong as possible, both of the family, both of the community, both at the local level. You believe that is possible for any type of people, even Black people, regardless of the historical circumstances. So that possibility and you're wanting a people to make themselves who they are, especially under strong values, isn't the biggest deterrent of ensuring that, to ensure that there is a level of separation, or dare I say, a level of like wealth inequality, which you could attribute wealth to power? Wouldn't that just be the billionaire class? And if they can just get more and more rich and more resources, then those people have less and less of the capability of building these strong communities. What is the incentive behind building a society that is strong if these people can just get richer and richer and
Well,
richer
they die
and become
eventually.
the elite?
They die eventually, and
And then
money
they give their money to their kids.
and it disperses, and the people that are on the top do not stay on the top. If you look at wealth movement throughout history, people ebb and flow at the top and the bottom all the time. That is the nature of it. I mean, and this is a well studied thing. We have more of that available in this country than anything else, because we have equality of opportunity, which is what we want. You want to give people the ability to rise. And that's why I'm talking, I wasn't picking on black people specifically, but there's this idea of artificially trying to give people a leg up, and I don't believe in that. It doesn't matter what the race, it doesn't matter what the background, it doesn't matter what the historical oppression had. You push through that stuff and you become strong as a culture, and you will win. And America is the only place that you can do that as rapidly as we can do it here. Where I have a problem with billionaires is what we have done is, in creating a very strong government structure of bureaucrats, they get owned by that billionaire class, and because of our big government ends up doing their bidding, and that's how you get oligarchs to control vast amounts of resources that can't be taken out. They get things embedded into the law that prevent fair competition. They get things put into the law that requires armies of lawyers to sort through so that they stay in those positions. You cure that by creating more competition and a true free market. We do not have a free market here like we used to, or like we should. It is a corporatocracy. You eliminate that, you will reduce the power of those billionaires.
How would you have a free market if you don't have a strong governmental body to regulate the billionaires?
Well, no, we regulate the little guys. We don't regulate the billionaires. We regulate the little guys, because the billionaires are the ones that are making a lot of that happen.
So if you did not have a check on monopolies and these billionaires just bought up all the businesses, how do you stop them?
Well, I mean, I'm not saying no government. I'm not arguing for no government. I'm saying that what happens is government and big business get into league with one another, and then they box out the small competitors. They box out the little guys. They create a lock on search engines, and they manipulate the search engine suggestions and results that point you in the directions that they want it to go. They create locks on certain things, and it's because of the government that they're able to do that stuff. We reduce the size of government, we break up some of the bureaucracy, and we'll have more free market.
Wouldn't a smaller government allow these billionaires to influence the government more?
Not necessarily. I mean, you understand what I'm saying is half the laws that get put in place oppress the small businesses. The big businesses have all the wealth and the resources and all the lawyers and all of that stuff. They're the ones that are getting half of these laws passed.
So the thing is, there are individuals that benefit from these billionaires, of course. I think everybody's common sense knows that. But that's why we got to ensure that we're voting in better representatives. And the representatives that are better, like the ones that do want to regulate or restrict them, actually have the power to do so. Of course, there's always the argument, oh, if you do this too much, they might leave and put their company across the whatever the international lines. I'm like, I think that's just a scare tactic. So my thing is, a smaller government would have less authoritative power on these billionaires, and there would be a much likelier chance of influence from the billionaires to these individuals, that are in the government itself. My thing is,
Well, that happens now.
that does happen now, but we also do vote in people that do regulate, and we do have regulatory laws that are put in place to limit them consistently, and then it goes across the aisle, and then they try to take it back, and then it's a little pendulum swing on limiting government, limiting taxes, and then not limiting government, limiting billionaires, limiting taxes, and then cutting taxes, and then trying to figure out what is the fine line. I mean, the thing is not necessarily it happening now and smaller government will happen, will make it better. You have to weigh out the pros and cons on, like, will it make it better or will it make it so much more worse that the wealth and quality gap that it currently exists rises so much more? It's a interesting question. I'm not really upset that you are in favor of smaller government. I think that's fine. I'm just surprised you're not more stringent on the idea of limiting the wealth and quality gap in the billionaire class. I'm just surprised about that.
Well, why would I? I mean, would love to be a billionaire myself. I mean, I'm a wealthy man. I work hard. I am an entrepreneur. I want to see people succeed. I would love to come up with that next solution that solves so many people's problems that they pay me billions of dollars. There's nothing wrong with that. Someone is going to gain wealth in a culture, and someone is going to gain power. In this country, you, Riddell, you have the ability, if you wanted to become very wealthy. And I'm sure you, I mean, listen, man, you're looking sharp there with your tie. Man, I have no doubt that you're working on your path to success. You want that open for you. I want that open for me. I want that open for everybody.
I think that's fair. My thing is, though, my interpretation of one of the principles behind, like, very important Christian values is the idea of ensuring that, like, people have the ability to kind of live their best lives beyond materialistic gains and, dare I say, greed. So it's like the idea of these people working hard and getting wealth, that's fine. Get money, have a nice house, have a nice car, but it gets to a point where this level of wealth is, dare I say, greedy.
Well, it
So
can be. I mean, listen, I know billionaires that are some of the most giving and generous people on the planet. I know people that are the most greedy and insanely greedy people that earn $100,000 a year. That is, remember, it's in the Bible. The biblical principle is the love of money. There are people that absolutely love and worship money, and that's a problem. I mean, I give away hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to things that are important to me, things that are life-changing for others, things that I find led to give to. I think that that's important for all of us to be doing that.
I agree. So with that know-how of how money can be abusive, how it can really be a perpetuator of the one of the, dare I say, deadly sins and greed, regardless if they're poor or not. There should, all across the board, this kind of infatuation with becoming a billionaire. I mean, I just don't see the logical conclusion that you're really abiding by the values that you preach. I'm not saying you specifically. I'm just talking about the billionaires in general. So yeah, that's probably the disconnect here in terms of, are you really following the good values that should be important to this country if you're just hoarding all this money to live a lifestyle that is not even necessary or for you or your family. You could be $100,000 and your family have generational wealth. I'm not saying that all the billionaires have to give
Yeah.
up their money by any means, but there has to be a realization that there's an innate selfishness behind hoarding all that money and keeping other people
Well, I
from
mean,
kind of
you're
reaching your
calling it
status.
hoarding. You're calling it
Yes.
hoarding. The billionaires that I know, and I know several. I mean, I've got some very close friends that are unbelievably wealthy, and they do a tremendous amount of good. They are employing thousands upon thousands of people. They treat their people wonderfully. They are innovating in things that are incredible. They have vibrant businesses. They give away a lot of money. They are some of the most generous people I've ever met. I mean, that's why I have those ones as friends. I mean, so you're suggesting that having that wealth means that they are hoarding it or they're not using it. Many of them are, billionaires on paper, but that's their net worth. But there's a misunderstanding of what that means. That okay, they've got $1 billion sitting in a bank somewhere and they're swimming through it like Scrooge McDuck. That's not what we're talking about. They have assets. They have valuable stocks and assets that are within their businesses, and sure, some of them enjoy the fruits of that and have wonderful cars and fly on private jets and holiday in wonderful places. But that doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that they're greedy. It doesn't mean that they're hoarding anything.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna disagree there. I think the idea of
Why?
being
Why would you?
because in my opinion, the good values that you're kind of preaching should be maximizing goodness while having a certain level of privilege based off your hard work. And I just don't believe that these people are maximizing goodness just because they're hiring employees. Is that in the benefit of the employees or is that benefit of their business? Are they maximizing the level of workers' comp money that they earn? Or are they just ensuring that they can pay them a certain amount to ensure that they get as much money as possible in their bank account and within their assets? Are these billionaires, when it comes down to certain deals that they do or certain type of people that they negotiate with, are those negotiations and deals in the goodness of society as a whole or them as an individual? I mean, there's a lot of
But you're
examples.
sniping from a distance on things that we're not. You're not naming somebody specific that you necessarily know about. You're making assumptions about what
Well,
somebody's
didn't you just
doing.
name Bill Gates? You named Bill
Well, no,
Gates, right?
well, I have issues with Bill Gates for an entirely different reason, but we mentioned Bill Gates, an hour ago. You're talking about someone. I mean, you're talking about a caricature of a billionaire.
Right.
You're suggesting, and look, Bill Gates, the people who work for Microsoft make a lot of money, so and are compensated incredibly well. I have problems with Bill Gates because of some of his environmental stances and some of his purchases of our farmland and wanting to control our food, wanting to feed us fake meat, and for what he did in Africa and experimenting with pharmaceuticals and murdering people. I mean, those are the problems I have with Bill Gates. I have a problem with Bill Gates because he comes from a philosophy that thinks that we should have 50% of the people on this planet gone. I mean, he thinks like Thanos. That's the problem I have with Bill Gates. But I've
So,
got billionaire friends that do not hoard their wealth, that have vibrant companies and wonderful people working for them. And then there are billionaires that don't. And there's billionaires that are billionaires because they manipulated financial markets.
I mean, your caricature, regardless if I agree with everything or not, of Bill Gates, I think perfectly embodies the sentiment that I'm referring to. Because at the end of the day, it's these individuals that have a whole slew of wealth that are able to do basically anything as they please. They can affect society. They can affect countries
Yeah.
with the vast amounts of wealth, or they could change society. They can do good, and they can really help a lot of locations instead. So if you have the capability of doing good, if you have the capability of improving society, if you have the capability of restructuring the kind of economic landscape to maximize the amount of people that are able to live a good life, that are able to just have good meals with their family, go home from work, have maybe a vacation, maybe two vacations a year with their family. My question is, why don't you? And if the why don't you is that, I mean, I work hard, and that just is like that doesn't really move me. So
Yeah, well, if you're
we're probably
suggesting that
go
people
ahead.
should do more good, I've got no problem with that. Where I have a problem with is when we are setting up a straw man or a caricature of a billionaire based upon what is said out there about wealthy people. I mean, you're saying some stereotypical things about what wealthy people are like, and that's not necessarily true. But if we want to go and call out specific people, or if we want to encourage people in our culture to do more good and do better and use their wealth in a meaningful way, I mean, I am all for that. I mean, we have Elon Musk putting rockets into space and doing it at a fraction of the cost that NASA did, with tremendous advancements in technology. We've got electric cars proliferating on this planet, and we've got all kinds of things because of billionaires. I mean, this almost every product that we have that has made our lives better. This supercomputer here, the person who created this was a billionaire. I mean, we have those things come from billionaires. If you want to call them out and tell them that they need to do more good, I'm here for it.
Yeah, what I'm saying, I don't feel like falls too far from the idea of holding them accountable, especially with the increase of the wealth gap and the increasing number of billionaires that exist in the society. I mean, it's the same principle as, like, if there was a superhero like Superman, you would expect them, with all the power that they have, to do what's in the best interest of society. Is it unfair? Probably, but at the end of the day, you have that level of influence and power in the first place. And the individuals that create these technologies, I think that is good for sure. But then you have to question some other things that happen as a result of said technologies, and not knowing, not really doing the best to ensure that does not have a damaging effect on the people. Regarding the smartphone and regarding social media, I mean, we're having a huge misinformation and political polarization crisis. We're having kids that are on their phone way too long, that some
Good.
people try to attribute that to ADHD. We have entered social media in general that's deteriorating certain values. When it comes down to it, we have certain electric cars that are being very problematic in certain aspects, and they're trying to implement AI, and there have been many recalls regarding those as they kind of trying to push that forward, of course. And now, of course, we got billionaires wanting to implement AI to replace people's jobs. So there are things to, when it comes to individuals. I'm not like Luigi Mangione. He's insane. I don't want to just kill all billionaires. That's ridiculous. That's
I'm
moronic.
glad to hear that.
I want to hold them accountable. That's it. And by holding them accountable, when it comes down to what they provide for society, I think that is a fair thing to ask. And I think the concept of a billionaire ultimately makes me think that these are individuals that care more about their business and their profits more so than the people that they employ, because the validity of having billions of dollars, I have see no rationale behind it other than more vacation time. So
Well,
I mean,
billionaires
this
are
is
notoriously not vacationers, and they notoriously work, obscene in order to be at that level generally. And I know these folks, and I have some of these people as friends. They do work extraordinarily hard. Now, it's not roofing, but it's not masonry, and people cannot. Sometimes get over the idea that, okay, physical labor is one kind of work, mental labor is another kind of work, um, and sometimes you have both. But people who are of that class generally are working 80 to 100 hours a week. They have um, sometimes very poor work-life balance. They are obsessive, high drivers, especially those that built that wealth, not inherited it. Now, you can have inherited wealth that you can turn into even more wealth, and you have a advantage there when you do that. But I have no problem with you saying some people do these things wrong. Some people abuse their employees. Some people don't pay as they should. Some people, have harmful business models. Some people are using AI and other things to, suppress or oppress or get rid of workers and truck drivers and things like that. Yeah, those are all problems and challenges that we're going to face in a society as it evolves. and we can't escape that. But what I want you to hold accountable is hold accountable the government that encouraged the destruction of the middle class. It wasn't the billionaires' fault that did that.
I probably disagree there as well. I mean, I guess this can be the final point before we kind of wrap up today's podcast episode. My thing is, I do recognize these billionaires work very hard. I feel the same way about them working hard that I do about streamers. I have a lot of criticism of streamers. These people just play video games all day, reactions all day, working hours on hours a day, creating content all day, talking to their editor all day. But in reality, their comparison of them making so much money from doing the activities that they're doing compared to the average worker who's struggling to feed their family, I just don't think it's a comparison that I'm willing to entertain. So that's kind of how I feel similarly when it comes down to billionaires. I mean, you worked to where you got, fair. Now provide back into the society that ensured that you got to where you got. And when it comes down to the government, I'm also very critical of the government. I think they should be more stringent on a lot of different avenues to ensure that, one, it's more efficient. One, they have less power. We got to take away some power from the government and all three branches. And last thing, to ensure that they are here for the people, not here for the billionaires. When it comes down to the people who are destroying the middle class, I mean, if you want to put blaming the billionaires, I mean, the government, that's fine. But the people benefiting is the billionaires. So if the billionaires realize that the government is helping them by destroying the middle class, then why don't they put more money into the economy to help regain the middle class? I know why. There's an incentive to keep yourself a billionaire. You don't want that. So there's just going to be, and I understand because, like you said, you're friends with them. You know them. You have a goal to be there. The American dream is about to become the best version of yourself. Me, I'm a perceiver. I look at society and I want to create a better society that I think is good for Americans as a whole. So I am not attached to like a lot of these different entities, regardless of where they come from. So yeah, I agree that there are some that are good, maybe. And then there are some that are bad. There are problems with government for sure. There's mischaracterizations of billionaires. That happens, misinformation about billionaires. But I just don't come from that place. I just come from a place where I'm looking at it, analyzing it, and this is what I see. So probably you won't agree, but good conversation.
Hey, it's fun to talk about it. Well, I appreciate coming on the show, Riddell. Thank you.
No problem. I do think it's good to have people who are willing to engage in this conversation. There are some important things that you said that I do think people should hold account in terms of the importance of the values and importance of the structure and community and certain things that people should really pay attention to be a good Christian and work hard and get your feet up. There are things there, and there's things to criticize, of course, on the left as well as on the right, of course. So another perspective is something always appreciated on my platform, at the very least.